A chilling new twist has emerged in the case of Cookie and Kitty, the sisters accused of joining a friend in the brutal, broad daylight stabbing death of a Texas mother of five. Newly released police documents pull back the curtain on the moments leading up to the deadly attack and reveal what the sisters allegedly did afterward that could bring even more criminal charges. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Many have wondered what could have led up to this altercation, and now we're getting a glimpse into it all with the police report that authorities in Del Rio, Texas sent us. That is video per good citizen on YouTube of Cookie Diaz being arrested. You look at this, you can see that she is smiling. She even made a joke to the camera. And now knowing, having read the police report that I'm about to show you and reading through what police allegedly say happened, it makes this video that so many of us have seen since the story first broke even more unhinged. So police say it was Cookie Diaz who allegedly brought the knife to the confrontation and allegedly stabbed Caro Pena, who's the victim in this story, first allegedly stabbing her in the back. Now, before I get to what one of the other suspects in this case says about Caro Pena, the victim, and what Caro allegedly did before the altercation and how that could potentially factor into the defense in this case, I want to remind you of the people who are involved in this story. That is Caro Pena. She is the person who loses her life in this story. She was killed on Thursday last week, and this is video that was posted earlier this month on our Facebook that appears to show her as a mom heading to the water for a fun day with her family. Caro was 32 years old and she was a mom to 5 children. The Del Rio, Texas police chief unveiled in an interview with TMZ that he believes that Caro did know Cookie and Kitty Diaz, as well as the third suspect in this case, their friend, Keandra Faz. But he would not say in that interview how they knew each other. So there's some big questions about the context of what allegedly happened here. And it's also still unclear at this point what led up to this violent confrontation. Now, we did find a good bit of information on the suspect who is now facing the most charges in this case. That is 21-year-old Kitty Diaz. And you look at her social media and you just wonder how this is the same person now facing charges in a brutal, broad daylight stabbing murder. She's a mom, and I know that social media only shows what people want you to see, and it often is only surface level and doesn't really show who someone really is. But in this case, you look at the videos that she posted and it's just all about her loving her 4-year-old son and how he is her entire world. And yet she is now accused of being part in this brutal murder. And she potentially could go to prison for the rest of her life. And on top of that, she is now facing a charge of allegedly trying to cover up evidence in this case. And I'll tell you how here in just a moment. But I want to dive into the new information we have per the police documents that have just been sent to us. Now, police say they first learned on Thursday of last week that someone had been stabbed and they were in really rough shape. They were called to the hospital on June 25th. And when they get to the hospital, they learned that Caro Pena had been allegedly stabbed 3 times, twice in the back and once in the stomach. Her injuries were so bad that doctors sent her to a hospital in San Antonio in hopes that her life could be saved, but she would die hours later. Police then figured out that Pena had allegedly been stabbed at this home in Del Rio. At this point, police have not unveiled how they learned that information, but this investigation went very fast. When police get on scene, they go to the house that is next door to the address where they say the altercation took place, and that's where they make contact with 19-year-old Keandra Faz. Now, according to police, Faz claims that Caro Pena showed up at her house, quote, looking to start a fight. Now, again, it's unclear what the reason is for this alleged altercation, but something that we picked up on in the police report that is interesting, unclear whether it means anything. Police allege the altercation took place at a very specific address in Del Rio, and they say that Faz lives in the house next to the address, according to the court record. So we don't know who lives at the address where police say the altercation took place or whether the altercation just happened to take place on that property. But that's something we're just going to keep an eye on as this goes forward. So let's talk about the altercation. You have Pena who shows up. According to Faz, she was looking to start a fight. Unclear whether that's true because Faz is now facing a murder charge in this case. But as far as the investigation, police, they don't have to go off just witness statements in this story because they say everything was caught on doorbell camera at the home where they say the altercation happened. And police watch this video and they say they see Caro Pena showing up at the house. She's driving a black pickup truck. And then shortly after that, when she arrives and she starts to have this altercation with Faz, there is a black Chrysler that shows up. And this is where Cookie and Kitty Diaz enter the story. Police write, the sisters get out of the car and they approach Caro Pena. Quote, within the video footage, Amaya, which is Cookie's first name, is observed with an object believed to be a knife in her right hand. Cookie and Caro Pena get into an altercation and Cookie is observed striking Caro Pena in the back, where blood can be observed on the back of her shirt. Cookie's clothing description was observed to be a red tank top and blue jeans. Now, again, it is believed that Pena was stabbed 3 times. This was first reported by Fox News, twice in the back and once in the stomach. That is a brutal, frankly, it's hard to find words when you just think of how brutal it is that someone would do that to another human being. Now, Kitty Diaz, the mom who you saw in those TikTok videos, who apparently loved her son so much and he was her entire world, her reason for living, she allegedly physically assaults Caro Pena on the video. And then police say Keandra Faz allegedly assaults Pena as well. It's unclear at this point how Pena was able to get to the hospital, but police say after the alleged attack, her alleged killers fled the scene. I do want to note just how quickly police acted in this case because it only took officers roughly 2 hours from the moment that they were called to that hospital where Pena was fighting for her life, only 2 hours until they were able to make an arrest in this case. Police say they tracked the Diaz sisters to a home on the other side of Del Rio, and that's where they say Cookie's car, which she allegedly drove to the fight, was parked outside. It's also important to note that police say on video, during the fight, Kitty Diaz was wearing a pink tank top and blue jeans, and Cookie was wearing a red tank and blue jeans. Yet, when police see them a short time later at the house they allegedly fled to, quote, while speaking with Kitty and Amaya, it was observed that they were no longer wearing the clothing originally seen on the video footage, and they had recently showered as their hair was wet. Later that night, it was around 9 o'clock, about 5 hours after the Diaz sisters were arrested as well as Faz, that Pena lost her life, that she succumbed to her injuries at that hospital in San Antonio. These police documents say that Cookie Diaz, Kitty Diaz, and Keandra Faz should face murder charges, but they still have yet to be indicted, so we're waiting on that to happen. Kitty Diaz is also facing an additional charge of tampering with evidence. According to court records, all 3 suspects were unemployed, and they're all being held in a local jail in Texas, and they're being held on $5 million bonds. There is an image that is circulating online that shows the alleged altercation between Pena and her 3 attackers, and that image is far too graphic to show you here. Pena appears to have blood on her back as she is surrounded by 3 women. One of Pena's friends told Fox News, quote, that girl, she was a fighter. She was still standing her ground. Joining us now to talk more about this investigation from Texas, retired homicide detective Phil Waters. Great to have you as always here on Law and Crime. So one of the suspects, Keandra Faz, told police that the victim, Caro Pena, came to her house, quote, looking for a fight. Apparently, all of this was captured on video. The attack itself, police say. Like, how much does the reason that Caro Pena showed up at the house potentially matter in all of this going forward?
Well, it's good to be back with you, Chris. I will tell you, I mean, it all goes to motive. I mean, it's not something that has to be proven in court when this thing gets to the prosecution. However, it's always important for detectives to determine why these circumstances occur. That's always the big question. Why?
Well, and I think too, because on one hand it's motive, so you kind of understand how they came together. the Del Rio police chief said that they knew each other to an extent. We really don't know like what the relationship was, but and we haven't seen the video for ourselves either. But this seems to be a very, very brutal murder. On the other hand, if Caro Pena came to the house looking for confrontation, does that open the door potentially to some sort of like self-defense argument that these suspects could make, knowing that there is going to be video there that a jury would see down the line of how this confrontation went down?
Oh, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any argument here for self-defense. It's clear that there is some kind of relationship between the three women that committed the murder and the victim in this case. And look, people murder people for one of three reasons: sex, drugs, or money. And in this particular case, it may be all three. So there's going to be something, and there's an interpersonal turmoil going on here between these women. And for whatever reasons, the one decided that the only way to solve this problem was to murder the victim in this case.
And according to the reports, that Cookie Diaz is the one who brought the knife to this altercation, and she's the one who is accused of stabbing Carl Pena. And then I think it was Fox News had she was stabbed twice in the back, once in the stomach, which is just a brutal, brutal attack on someone. But then the other two, Kitty Diaz, her sister, and then Faz, the third, who's their friend, they're accused of physically assaulting Carl Pena as well. When it comes to the fact that only one person had the knife, though, does that factor into in any way an argument that maybe Kitty Diaz could make that, well, it was really my sister was the one who brought the knife, so like she's the murderer. I wasn't the one who dealt any sort of like fatal blow to this person. How does that work out in Texas law?
Well, in Texas law, it's the offensive parties. So the people involved in this thing were all collective. They were all collaborative in this murder. And so just because you have one that is actually dealing the death blows, the other two, their involvement in it puts them all in the same bundle. So no, the law of parties in Texas is going to get each one of them charged with the same offensive murder.
You know, every single day we cover, very, very difficult stories. This is certainly one of them. You in your career as a homicide detective, I mean, you see, brutality on a daily basis and you work to solve that stuff. And I just think of this case, and so people can understand. I mean, the idea that someone in broad daylight would take a knife and stab somebody else. And sometimes I think we get desensitized to what that actually is like. But what stands out to you when it just comes to the brutality of this attack from what police have said?
But look, one of the most personal ways to murder someone is the use of a blade, is the use of a knife, edged weapon of some kind. You have to be up close, you have to be personal, and you are feeling each blow. This is not like shooting somebody from a distance. This is up close, personal, and I would say the only other maybe more personal type of using some sort of method to kill somebody, murder someone, is strangulation. That's certainly more personal, but you're actually feeling the life of a person leave their body. But when these stabbings occur, these are, look, I'm sure people have seen, there's been all sorts of bladed weapon wounds on the interwebs. You've got these pictures and that kind of thing. And they're brutal. They're atrocious to see a human body sliced open. These stabbed several times, especially when you start talking about multiple stab wounds. I'm a little surprised that there were only the kind of low end number of stab wounds on this thing. When someone, typically what I've seen is that when someone uses a knife and there's some sort of a personal animosity, there's a more personal relationship, there's a more they're motivated by hate for this individual, and they use a knife. It's usually something that gets out of control, and you get excessive number of wounds. But you know what's interesting about these the women involved here. Of course, we don't know the background, and that's my curiosity here.
Mhm.
They went there looking for a fight. They got the fight. And at that point in time, the fact that there are video and those kinds of things, it doesn't make any difference to them. They're kind of myopic. They've got one thing in mind, and they went out and they carried it out.
Well, and there's the video too of Cookie Diaz and Kitty Diaz being arrested. And like after, we did this story a couple days ago when this story first broke and we hadn't gotten all the police documents yet. There was kind of just a press release that was put out by the Del Rio Police Department. And then you see this video and they're kind of like smiling. In fact, they are smiling as they go. But Cookie Diaz is the one where you very clearly see her with a smile on her face. And then she even makes a joke to the camera. At that point, Caro Pena had not died yet. But if all of this is true, she is laughing as she's being arrested after stabbing someone twice in the back and once in the stomach, according to police. Just what, and you've interacted with people who have committed horrific crimes in your career. Like, how do you even make sense of seeing something like that, knowing what she's now accused of?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. When I saw that part of this particular incident, I kind of went back way back. Krenwinkel and that crew with the family with Charlie Manson. I mean, they were doing the same thing,
Yeah.
laughing and thinking this was a big joke. So sometimes you don't know what that is. Either she's just a cold blooded person who sociopath, and maybe it may be even on that level of a psychopath. I mean, the difference, at least in my simple definition between the two, is that the sociopath does something, commits an act like this, and they think they're justified in what they did. A psychopath, on the other hand, commits a sociopathic act and enjoys what they're doing. So I don't know if that's an indication here that she actually enjoyed uh, what she was doing. I go back to the Carl Faye Tucker incident, the pickaxe murder in Houston, and that gal, she killed two people using a pickaxe, embedded the pickaxe into the chest of the female victim, and said later in an interview with law enforcement that she had had an orgasm every time she struck them. So I'm just telling you here, when these types of events occur, it's interesting to watch the reaction in this case of the suspects when they are arrested, and it just I tell you what, this video of the arrest and the laughter involved in it will not bode well for them in a trial. This is not going to put them in a very good light.
Because that was my next question, because obviously it's going to grab headlines and go viral when you have a video like that and you see it and it's just shocking every single time you look at it. You're like, this is like, even if this wasn't a murder case, the idea that someone being taken away for what would be almost certainly prison time to be laughing in the hours after it happened is wild to watch. But like, from like, you're building your case, if you're the detective on this, like just that demeanor. We don't know if they said anything in the police cruiser on the way back to the jail and where they're being held now. But how does demeanor like that factor into the case that you're building against them?
Well, it's all part of it's all part of the big picture, right? I mean, if I'm the detective that's going to be interviewing those women, you have to take that into consideration. And when you go in there to speak with them, you're not going to immediately address the way they acted when they were arrested. You're not going to immediately jump in there and start talking about the incident itself. I mean, if I'm going in there to interview, I'm going to try to establish that relationship with them, and I want them to. I want to start by talking about the relationship they had with the victim. So let's start there. How do you know her? You know what led up to this, and get them to open up, hopefully, and tell you what the motivation was behind this thing. And then when you've got multiple participants here, then at one point in time, you can start playing one against the other. So, and hopefully get more information, from each one.
Well, I always and maybe one day we'll see the interrogation video, if there is that. If they ended up speaking to police and what they may have said. Um, Faz, the suspect, she said enough to say that Pena came looking for a fight. But I wonder too, like they probably didn't know that police had what I think is like doorbell camera of the entire altercation. Like when you're going into an interrogation, if they don't know you have that and you're able to see everything that went down, like how does a detective take that and then go in? Like, what is the game plan when you sit down with someone where you know that you have seen everything and then you're going to let them talk and tell their side of the story? Like, how do you use that video against them in an interrogation room?
Well, that's a timing issue, Chris. That's something you're not going to reveal. I would find it hard to believe. I mean, in the world we live in now, the digital world, I would find it very hard to believe that they don't know that there are videos, that they don't know that there may be a ring camera there. I find that hard to believe. As you're in it, if hopefully they will be able to interview these people, and you want to be prepared, of course, as you go into the interview room with as much information as you can get. And so you're going to view the video because you want to have that in your head when you know what happened. You're looking at the video and you see what happens and who struck the first blow, who got the first confrontation, and then when did the others come into the melee. So that would be important in the sense that if you get to the point in that interview where the individual you're talking to does open up and start speaking with you, then you're going to ask. You're not going to ask them close-ended questions about what you've seen on the video. You want to ask them open-ended questions and give them a chance to explain what you've seen in the video. So you don't want to feed them information, of course, in any interview, but you've got a reference point in this case where you see exactly what has happened, what's occurred, and now you just need to find a way to get them to, for lack of a better term, narrate the video that you've seen.
And then just lastly, for Kitty Diaz, she's facing an extra charge of trying to hide evidence in this case. And police note in the narrative they put together that she and her sister have different clothes on and they had just showered by the time police end up arriving at their door. And all of this took place. I mean, they were called to the hospital within 2 hours. I mean, from learning that this stabbing had took place to the arrest was roughly 2 hours. So this is like a pretty lightning quick investigation. Why does it matter? How much does it matter? Because we know them changing clothes. It's pretty obvious potentially what they were trying to do. But like, how much does that matter as you're building your case that these were people right after what you just saw in the video happened, and then suddenly they're in different clothes and they had just showered. Within this short amount of time it took police to track them down.
Well, that's a great question. So this is the other side of when you use an edged weapon to kill somebody, to murder someone, because you're going to get all that blood back on you at some point in time. There's some of this that's going to get on you. So they go home, they shower, and do that. These are affirmative links that are leading to these folks as being the right people who've done the wrong thing. So that collecting that evidence, that type of evidence, is critical, just to put together the case so that you have on the timeline, you've got the series of events that occurred, and then you can track the evidence and where it went and hopefully recover it. Now, and it goes to show, it's going to show that it's going to go to guilt, to the actual act of these people that they're going around, they're tampering with evidence. It's going to be felony tampering with evidence. So that's the additional charge there. Whatever they did to dispose of the knife, whatever they did to clean their clothes, those kinds of things. And hopefully you can get to the clothes before they are clean. And it sounds like they were pretty quick here in finding these suspects, collecting the evidence, and so forth. So right now, it would appear that uh, there's really been very few stones that have been left unturned, and they've been able to move. The detectives have been able to move quickly and recover most of the evidence, if not all of it.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next. I think it's unclear at this point whether they have the murder weapon, but they certainly have a lot of evidence through that surveillance video that they say that they have. We'll see what happens next in this case. Phil Waters, retired homicide detective. Always great to have your expertise here on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.